So, welcome to the IFGT Book Club, our monthly book club. So, we're going to be continuing today with Brother Don Ringgold, who gifted us last month with the subject matter of health, wealth, and that comes from his book, Health, Wealth, the Genisis Project. And as we wait for others to come onto the call, I just want to remind those that haven't heard that I met Don about a year ago. Yeah, a little over a year ago, around Christmas times up in Philadelphia. And Don and I have since become great friends. And he's also become sort of a confidant for me, as well as a health coach. So Don shared with me his impetus for taking this journey of health, and I may let him share a little of that to you. I gave a snippet to you in the email. So I was talking about meeting Don Ringgold, and so Vanessa and I, we were in Philadelphia, and we were at this a meeting of a group of a philosophical group, and this gentleman began to talk about esoteric symbols. And typically in these discussions after lunch, you feel like, well, we're going to have some small talk and we'll go home. But this gentleman pulled out this big book, and I recognized the book, and it had symbols. So I knew this was going to be a different type of afternoon, and indeed it was. And so it began what has turned out to be a strong friendship between Don Ringgold and myself. So what intrigued me about Don, and I'm coming from a personal perspective, I'm going to give you the formal introduction here shortly. What intrigued me about Don is that his dialogue and his sensibility, his dialogue challenged the normal sensibilities of the day. And what I mean by that is, I met him right before this, what's termed the COVID pandemic. And so he and I talked shortly after that, and his philosophy tended to challenge the, let me say, the going-ons of the day. And so, and I told him I was gonna hold him to that, and I wanted to ask him direct questions about how can you challenge this. And of course, with his knowledge, having studied this health thing for 40 something plus years, he was able to give me some pretty rational answers. And me being a science-minded person, that's pretty much what I and I also have a spiritual path, but I came into this world. My second awareness was I had to have reason to satisfy my sensibilities. Of course, later I was able to reconnect to that spiritual side of myself and listen to that inner voice. But I say all that to say that for me, listening to facts, listening to opinions, listening to information, it has to ring true with me in fact, and it has to ring true with me at the core. My soul has to resonate with my soul. So I think that's the heart, the heart-brain connection, the mental and the heart connection. If those two synchronize with me, I feel like what I'm hearing is true. And each conversation I had with Don, it turned out that way. He was very consistent, and that was the key thing. So let me go ahead and read to you how I'd like to start this day out. So imagine a petition to the cosmic for freedom from disease. At that instance, the clouds move. The sun shines down in a beacon of light upon your being. So now let us be perfectly clear that this book is about identifying that disease is caused by our consumption of mucus-producing food, denatured food, and poisons. Very key point. Whether we eat those poisons or they get into our bodies by some means unknown or to ourselves, some means known or unknown. And the fact that we get accumulated waste that is difficult to remove, in some cases never get removed. So the author, Don Ringgold, is presenting a complementary alternative to synthetic substances or any other means of healing outside of you. All the healing tools are within every human being. And after more than 40 years of investigating the reasons we get sick, the author finds that when a person makes the decision to heal themselves, it is possible to end disease forever. And I'll repeat that, because this is what the author proclaims in his book after 40 years of investigation. So I'll let him defend that. The author finds that when a person makes the decision to heal themselves, it is possible to end diseases forever. There's a caveat. It all depends on the person's willingness to be obedient to the will of the mind of all creation and Mother Nature. Now that's the caveat. Once the will within a person is harmonized, the choice one makes attracts healing, harmonious foods, thoughts, words, and action. Now, so who's this, and who are we going to listen to, and what gives us this authority, this guidance authority to say this? And I'm going to show you, this is the book, Don Ringgold's Health, Wealth, the Genesis Project. If you haven't got it, you need to pick it up, because I can tell you I'm not going to proclaim life-changing yet, but I'm going to say it could certainly get you harmonized and synchronized in those moments when you're having questions, you're doubting yourself. For instance, I woke up this morning and I was sharing with Vanessa, I'm like, God, my energy is low. I've been trying this new way of eating, and sure enough, before Don, we were talking earlier, I was prepping. I saw it in his book, Why My Energy Was Low, and it was encouraging because it says, just hang in there. Don't stop now. And I'll ask him a question about that later so that he can share his philosophy on that point. But it really helped me. It helped change me in terms of getting through this day. So the book is a result of the author's experience from age 14 after observing for 2 weeks the death of his stepfather, Hamilton Sr., from colon cancer. The seed to fully understand disease, the cause, the cure, and prevention was established and the mission initiated. So this is clearly from personal experience. As the years went by, it became clear to the author that it was his cosmic mission to deliver this investigative report. And at the age of 23, he recognized that the inner self was unfolding and transmitting directions to the outer self, the various truths about healing and harmony. And that's as it should be. Once the outer self becomes familiar with the inner self, makes contact with the inner self, and begins to listen to that inner self, which is connected to the all, then one starts to get that download of information. So after attending the Community College of Philadelphia, where his studies included biology, anatomy, and physiology, he earned an associate's degree in general studies, a Dean's List graduate. He continued studies at Temple University, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and on a tennis scholarship. Remember, I say he was a professional tennis player. And was graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from the Annenberg School of Communication, with a master's degree in business administration from Grand Canyon University out of Phoenix, Arizona. And he continues as a doctoral student in the School of Education at Grand Canyon University with a dissertation topic of servant leadership and the traditional education of the disease prevention problem. So the author went on to become a tennis professional and professional communicator. And we had some great talks around him being a professional communicator because he was up in the Philadelphia, New York area. He had a lot of people coming in and out that, if I call their names, they read like, the who's who of the 60s, of the 70s of the entertainment industry. So I'll let y'all get to know him and ask him about those later. And so he continues that education with an esoteric school of higher consciousness, the ancient mystical order of the Rose Cross, also known as the Rosicrucian Order Amark. So with that, I'm going to bring Don into the conversation by asking him a simple question before he starts his formal presentation. Don, I kind of gave your input. I was about to ask you your impetus for writing the book, but I think I sort of gave it away there. Having said that, let me just say, after you heard what I read and after these many years of living this, what you've written, do you still hold these things? Because you make some pretty poignant points in here. And I'll say this to the group, some points that would challenge the normal sensitivity of one's mind today. For instance, Don says in here, the disease is unnecessary. So my question would be to him, what is the purpose? No, not to him today. My question would be to those on the call. What do you think the purpose of disease is? If this guy says it's unnecessary, and we're going to challenge him on that, right? What do you think, Ken, Eno, Vanessa, Seth, Henry? What do we think the purpose of disease is? And we're going to allow Don. So without further ado, Don, I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm just going to let you come on and talk to us about what you've heard and correct anything that I have got out of context or wrong.
Peace, profound, everyone. And thank you, Henry. You did an excellent job as usual. And firstly, let me commend all of you, the Institute for Global Transformation, for taking this leadership role in bringing forth the various subject matter that you bring to help people to find what has been lost. We're in a situation today where we're not sure about our condition. And what I mean is that people are afraid to breathe in a situation where they're not really seeing the truth about disease. Firstly, I want to humbly again thank you for having me here today. And when it comes to the fact that disease is not necessary, because all of this is not about Don Ringgold, it is about all of us seeking and finding the truth. Not my truth, the truth. And in order to truly understand the truth, let us look and consider that our five senses, our seeing, our hearing, tasting, smelling, feeling, are indications of the truth. And you talked earlier about the inner self and the outer self and how to harmonize the inner self and the outer self. In some ways, it's called the Sophia by some people, the marriage between the inner self and the outer self. And the theme for today, since we are continuing from our last meeting, is the law of love. Because we have this connection in us. It's a desire that we're not always understanding. But we do have this feeling that is right. What I mean by it's right is the fact that we were never meant to be sick. The only reason disease happens is because we let it. The beauty of it is, whatever you want to call that which cannot be named, the Creator, God, the Father, whatever you would like to call it, vibrations, spirit, it is in charge. And if we can harmonize with that all of creation, one of the things that we can take as a barometer or as a foundation is the sun. When we get into it and we have these five senses that is the law and order of perception, then we're perceiving what is true. The truth, which some call the absolute truth, the other with the five senses is the relative truth. The absolute truth more or less is like surrounding everything. So if we take our truth that our senses are telling us and open up that sixth sense, because we have a pineal gland in our heads. That pineal gland is very much like, you know how you can turn on the television or turn on a radio station and tune in to the station that you want. Well, that's what we have in us. We have the ability to recognize that antenna, so to speak, and utilize it to tune in to the all of creation that is indicated by the sun and is also indicated by that which we cannot see. For instance, we know there's infrared and there's ultraviolet. We know that the trees give off oxygen. Human beings and animals giving off the carbon dioxide. We can't see that, but it's there because we're breathing. Now, that gets us to the other part of today. We have the law of the love. The law of the love, or the law of love, there's an author by the name of Dr. Lonnie Edwards, and he talks about the fact that it hasn't been understood, this law of love. And like our brother or our friend, there's also a person by the name of Dr. Ken Blanchard, and he has a book out called Lead Like Jesus. He said everybody likes Jesus. Maybe everybody doesn't like Christians, but everybody likes Jesus according to him. And the fact of the matter is that when we get down to this relationship between the senses and our reality and the actuality, what we're getting to is balance and harmony. So let's look at moving forward with this theme of today, the law of love, love one another. Let's find out how to love ourselves so that we can love others in the best possible way. So there are those of us who hear this voice within, this connection with the law of love, this DNA, if you will. And it is always trying to reproduce itself. And we hear that whispering of the soul saying, clean out, get in tune, be at one with the all of creation. So those of us who are hearing that voice move in that direction to transition from non-living substances and food to living substances. Now we have two very possible categories. One is people who are highly encumbered. And what I mean by highly encumbered are those who you might find the abdomen is sticking out. The reason for that is the colon is full of accumulated waste. Matter of fact, there have been some people that at the time of transition in certain autopsies, they found that this person has 60 pounds of waste in the colon. So let's say that the person who has this great abundance of mucus and poisons and waste in the system decides, I want to make this transition. I want to eat good, as they say. The important thing is to make the transition without causing a problem, without a crisis. Now, that's pretty hard, because no matter who you are, no matter who the human being is, there are going to be challenges. Let's just face it. There are going to be challenges. So when we're confronted with the challenge, we want to go back within and meditate on that point. That's why Don Ringgold's Health Wealth talks about sight. Study, investigate, test, and experiment. So, okay, let's say, this is a person highly encumbered, and they're saying, okay, now how am I going to start this? The very first thing is, don't make any drastic changes. Everything is done very methodically. So let's say you've meditated on that and you figured out, okay, here's the end result of my first action. My first action is going to be when I go to buy my food, or if I happen to have grown my own food, which is not probable, but when I go to buy my food, I'm going to buy organically. So in other words, there's no big changes, just a change from conventional to organic. If I like chicken, it's going to be a chicken that was grown organically. If I like beef, it's going to be a beef that is grown organically. If whatever it is, it's going to be living as close to possible, as close to living as possible. If I like pasta, instead of the regular pasta, I'm going to get some brown rice pasta. Why? Because the other pasta creates too much mucus. And what I'm trying to do is transition. I'm trying to get the mucus out, which means that my next step is green leafy, starchless vegetables. Might even be one time eating 5 ounces of spring mix salad with an organic dressing if necessary. And so therefore, that kind of analyzing, that kind of thinking, that kind of steps in the right direction is done in a way that it doesn't push the poisons out too quickly. Now, when these poisons are coming out, there is the possibility, and of course, each individual situation has to be evaluated in itself. Get all the help you can. But remember, you have the answers within yourself. That's the beauty of all of this. You are equipped with everything you need. And again, that is so beautiful that when we are able to recognize that there are those things called prevaricating spirits. In other words, we don't like people not telling us the truth. Well, that's what those of us who are getting sick, I'm not condemning anyone or anything like that. Let's put all of that emotional stuff over there and let's just deal with what's going on. When it happens, when we get ill or when we're not feeling well, the whole idea is, okay, how do I balance this situation? Because what's going on is, remember, every time we're consuming, we're making blood. So we're trying to balance things, and we can use herbal application. We can use, and again, depending on the situation, if you're highly encumbered, then it might be elderberry root. If you're moderately encumbered and you're able, after investigating golden seal root, you can use that by itself, or you can combine it with echinacea. That helps to dissipate mucus and neutralize poisons. But remember, you are eliminating all of the bacteria in the colon, and you want to, in the system as well, and you want to replace that. Probiotics is the name for it today, but I like to think of it as being like an animal in the forest. It's like they already have the answers. They don't know anything about probiotics. But okay. So getting back to how this transition can be made, and let's look at it. Let's look at it this way. We're eating now. We've bought the organic food, and we're chewing in a way that the food becomes liquid. Now the food is going down into our system, goes through the stomach, goes into the small intestines. Now we're talking about the main thing, making blood. But guess what? The reason why we tend to feel bad or not get the energy that we need is because the air can't get through. So can't get through in the way that it was intended to get through. So what we want to do is recognize that the old way of eating, and for instance, I'm talking about eating animal product is dead. Unless you're like a lion and you're eating it immediately after you kill it, bones, blood, and all. And there might be one or two tribes in Africa that kill a steer and they eat right there. That's not the usual for most of us. So if we're cooking the animal, it is decomposing. That decomposition goes into our physiology. In other words, we're making blood. And so therefore, what happens is as it goes through the system, through the small intestines, and then to the liver and the pancreas and the spleen, and throughout the system, the lungs and the heart, what's happening is because our viscera, those organs, are sponge-like, that mucus gets caught up in those organs. So if think of it this way, if you put a lot of glue in something, what's it going to do? It's going to be sealed. It's going to be stuck. So when that happens, humanity calls it congestion or constipation. Constipation in that particular organ is being translated into a word, disease. There are 4,000 different names. But the birds and the animals don't have a name for it. If they get sick, they fast. They stop doing the things they did and they let it heal. Isn't it interesting how that DNA, that desire to reproduce itself, gives them what they need? Isn't it interesting how flowers have a certain amount of petals and it knows what to do? The bees know how to go to the flower and get the pollen and all these things. And we as human beings, our position on this earth is to recognize those prevaricating spirits I spoke about earlier, those destructive spirits. And when they come into our head, the problem is we don't always see it. That's the problem of disease. We don't know that we have been led by untruth for over 3,000 years when we were given the direction that the herbs before thy meat. And what comes to mind is Hippocrates, who said, let your food be your remedies and your remedies be your food. He also noticed how birds have sense enough to clean out their colon. We call it an enema. So let's get back to that place where we were talking about how the viscera are all clogged up, all glued up. When we eat the green leafy vegetable, what we're doing is we're helping to sweep the colon. And as the colon slowly gets swept out, all that mucus and pus comes out, and then we don't feel good. And then we say, oh man, I've been eating right. This is not working. It's making me feel bad. Well, do we consider what happened 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago if we're, 50 years old or older? Do we consider that was because we allowed those destructive spirits to lead us, to make us think that if we ate something dead, we would become something living? But what we're supposed to do as human beings is recognize those lying spirits, those destructive spirits, teaching the untruth, recognize them and bring them to the harmony. So when the human being gets the idea to cleanse and balance and love thyself and love one another, when they get those thoughts, that is the law of love, giving them what they need. Okay, now, we're a person that has swept out the colon, and now we're coming into a new, let's say that we hung in there, and we're coming into a matter of fact, we're being born again into a higher realm of consciousness, because we're all evolving, and this is one of the more exact ways to do it. There are different ways, different degrees of purification. So when that person reaches that point, now let's say that, okay, that person is going to continue. Let's talk about the person who is not so highly encumbered, but has a position or is in a stage in life where they need to now nourish themselves. Everyone needs to nourish themselves. I'm going to say it this way. When we start the day, if we start the day with something like, and I'm going to mention this product, Amazing Grass Green Superfood. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because not only will it stimulate, but then it will nourish. It will give you the vitamins, minerals, nutrients that the blood needs to be able to assimilate what is necessary in the air to give you power. And it may be even, not maybe, I'm going to just say, then once that blood is clean, you're going to be able to, or the human being is going to be able to assimilate nitrogen out of the air and have such power. Is unbelievable. It's unbelievable because we've been lying to ourselves so long. So when we come to that realization that by putting in those things that create power, we can start to understand what my mentor has taught, which is V equals P minus O. Vitality equals power minus obstruction. Because once we have released or gotten rid of the obstructions, which, by the way, are the mucus, the poisons, and the accumulated waste. Poisons would be categorized as anything like contaminants, such as additives, pesticides, things put on food, GMOs, anything that Mother Nature didn't create. And by the way, let me just bring this up since it's on my mind. When we make this transition, when a person is making this transition, there's a certain menu. I mentioned about earlier pasta, for instance, but on today's market, there are meat products. So in this Don Ringgold's Health Wealth, it does talk about soy. And a lot of people are so against it. I'm not recommending it, but I am saying that wheat meat, although it's not something that I'm going to recommend, it's better than dead meat. And what we do when we're eating dead meat, like we mentioned about the echinacea and golden seal to neutralize the poisons and dissipate the mucus, we can do the same thing with those kinds of products. For instance, I remember putting making spaghetti and meatballs, but doing it organically, making the spaghetti with either spelt pasta or brown rice pasta or quinoa pasta that doesn't create so much mucus. And then the meat was wheat meat. But I noticed in the morning that I had this certain kind of feeling. And therefore, what I'm saying is that that's where the echinacea and the golden seal can come in for those people making that kind of transition. Now, for those people who really want to do it straight up the line, then the meat becomes nuts, because the true food for the human being is fruit. That's where we're all going back to. We talk about lost understanding or lost information. What we're all doing is trying to get back to that place where all we consume is fruit. I have done experiments on that. And at this point, I'm still transitioning to that now. You may know a person that can live off of fruit or is an athlete that lives off of fruit only. And the other thing I'm going to mention, I mentioned about these amazing grass green superfood as something to start the day. And we're always, of course, talking about starting the day with water. I like spring water. Some people say purified water. But with this amazing grass green superfood, you might consider Himalaya ashwagandha. Why? Because it gives energy and gives power, and it is food. Although it may be in tablet form, what it's doing is making good, clean blood. Now, these other things I'm going to mention, as a matter of fact, even the amazing grass green superfood, as an individual, you must decide if it's going to work for you. I do recommend that, the amazing grass green superfood. But what I'm saying is every individual situation must be properly evaluated so that you can have the success. So read the labels, think about it, and then make your decision. So let's say you made the decision with the amazing grass green superfood, the Himalaya ashwagandha. Then there is Kaolic garlic 106. Why 106? Because 106 has hawthorn berry in it, which is going to rebuild the walls of the heart. Cayenne pepper, which is going to strengthen the whole cardiovascular system. And of course, garlic, that's going to give you power. It's interesting, when you take too much garlic, you get tired. Some people may eat garlic on a daily basis and maybe eat onions, and they may not need that product. But I'm a person, I didn't like eating garlic all the time. So that works for me. And I think it could work for those people who study it and decide what they want to do with it. Okay. Now, that being said, getting back to the person who is not highly encumbered and is eating the fruits and the green leafy starchless vegetables and the nuts. For breakfast, let's say after the herbs that I mentioned with the Kaolic garlic 106 and maybe even a half a teaspoon of bee pollen, organic if you can get it. You take a handful of blackberries, let's say, blackberries, blueberries, strawberries. A handful might be enough for you for breakfast. For others, I have this wonderful recipe that is, and when I wake up in the morning and I have this for breakfast, it's like a kid waking up for Christmas with all the presents.
Wow.
Yeah, because incidentally, what happens is this kind of way of consuming puts you into paradise. It is paradise in earth. So you'll have paradise on earth. And that's the love for one another. So you take the strawberries or whatever berries, and it's about a pint, let's say, of blackberries. And then you take a ripe organic banana. And if it's not ripe, you could put it in a toaster oven and get the skin brown, and then the sugars come out, because the blood needs carbohydrate. It needs fruit sugar. Yes, it needs iron. Yes, it needs lime. It needs those other things, but the fruit gives you everything that you need. And it's so interesting that we grow up believing, protein, I need protein. Well, isn't it interesting how mother's milk, and this is my good friend, Professor Arnold Ehret, he's talking about mother's milk is about 2% to 3% protein. And yet doesn't that build a strong body? And he's saying that it's a misnomer. The need for the kind of protein that we think we need, you can get it from the minerals. So it's living protein. And please, if you don't remember anything about what I've said today, remember this one thing: living food. That is what the Creator has given us to prevent all disease. And many people will say, well, I'm going to die anyway. It's about the quality of life. It's not as much, yes, a long life we all want. But we have to remember that this DNA is eternal. So while we're doing things here, this is the sort of like the learning place. And when we make that transition, we're continuing the journey. And any of us who have lost loved ones, don't worry, we'll see them again. It's a continuum. And that's the beauty of it all. And this is a preparation. So that's why we want to do what we're talking about in attunement with the sun. So we get back to, let's get back to this recipe now. We have the fruit, we have the bananas, and then, can you see this? Enjoy life. This is a cookie, but it's made from ancient ingredients, ancient organic ingredients. So instead of, I used to eat a raisin bran, and I always wondered, why would they put sugar on raisins? Duh. Mother Nature didn't do that. Why do they do that? I think you know why. But here's the thing. The ingredients are organic. So you put the cookies in there. I used to use that, the raisin bran, or, you can use organic muffins. And then peanut butter made directly. You can go to the store and have it directly made from the peanuts in a machine. It makes the peanut butter. So you can put about a tablespoon or, one or two. And this is mostly in the winter, although I'm a person, I eat peanut butter all year round, but it's recommended that you eat nuts mainly in the winter. Of course, again, every individual situation, I have athletic needs, you may not. Okay, so you put that tablespoon in there of the peanut butter, and then you can put a splash of almond butter, and then lava. Lava is a alternative for yogurt. I'm a person that ate yogurt for many years, and I want to get away from pasteurization and things that human beings do to a product, because that's why milk is so much of a problem. Milk is not coming directly from the cow. It is pasteurized. That changes up everything. That makes the casein create a paste. And that's what pastes up the colon. And that's something to look into as far as children and all of that. You could ask me about that later if you want. But I just want to finish up here, and then we can get into questions and so forth. So when we have a breakfast like that, like I said, it is unbelievable how delicious it is and how it works and gives you power. Lastly, I will mention Vegas Sport. Now, I'm mentioning that product because Brandon Brazier is a triathlete, and he's the one that put that product together. And I'm such in appreciation for his work. There are ingredients in that product that, you could pull it up on the internet and just look at what the ingredients are. Again, I'm not recommending that product for everyone, but it's a product that I've been experimenting with for quite some time. And earlier we talked about how to bring the nitric oxide out of the air into the blood. When you're able to run for 2 hours on the tennis court, eating that kind of breakfast that I just told you instead of steak and eggs, you almost don't believe it. But don't let doubt's not a bad thing, but don't let doubt take you off course. I know people that have tried for 2 years and given it up because the family got scared for them. And rightly so. But remember about fear, my friends. It can be transformed into courage. Fear is also a good thing because it gets us in a position to check out what's going on. And after we check it out, if we find everything's okay, then we can move forward. So that's what I'm saying here, that everything's okay as far as this diet is concerned, and that's what I'm doing. I'm reporting this to you. And incidentally, in our world, from 2004 to today, 2021, the interest in this kind of conversation and this diet change, and everything's about diet. Everything about your blood is about diet. And everything that we do with creating that blood is going to be a matter of degrees of love and cosmic consciousness. So let us move forward in greater understanding. And again, you Institute of Global Transformation, you are so to be commended. And I thank you for being here. And I thank you for the work that you're doing. And please, and I know you will, because Henry's a warrior for the light. I love that. He evanescent. It's beautiful. So let's all just continue to do that. And I'm willing to answer any questions that I can and to be of service. Again, I'm humbled by being here, and I thank you. So, Henry.
Thank you, Don. We really appreciate that. I'm going to call it discourse that you gave us. It was quite enlightening, invigorating, encouraging. But I know that there are questions in individuals' mind. I know there was questions coming up even as you talk. But so now let's ask those questions, because I have a few pointed questions. Because I've been doing some research over the last week, and when I say research, I've been listening to what some doctors have been saying out there about this current situation. But before I get into that, I'm going to allow others to ask some questions that I know came up while Don was pouring all that love and information out to us. So unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right. Now, I have multiple, but I'll just start with one. You said something about sweeping the colon. Can you give a little bit more information about that? I don't know if I heard everything I wanted or understood.
Yes. And as soon as you said that, what brings to mind, again, is my mentor, Professor Arnold Ehret, who has just a plethora of information. However, many people don't understand it. So when we talk about sweeping the colon or cleaning the colon, what's going on is there has been accumulated waste for quite some time. And we can't push out that waste too quickly. And if we ate fruit, that might push out the waste too quickly, because fruit is very powerful. So that's why the raw diet, for instance, might be a good thing for, I'm going to say, a few days. The individual would have to decide for themselves. But when there is this raw diet, and I gave the example of the spring mix, let's say a person ate spring mix about 5 ounces only, let's say for dinner. That would help to, if we have, let's say, a floor with a lot of dust and dirt on it, and we took a broom and we sweep that dust and dirt into a dustpan and then put it into some kind of container, that is what the raw food will do. And it isn't so much of a nourishing situation. I prefer actually to use the Amazing Grass Green Superfood, because it does supply nutrients. And more specifically, what I'm thinking about is the spirulina and the suncorella, because we talked about the protein earlier. Those are the sources of protein that give power. So we use that formula, vitality equals power minus obstruction. So when we're using the raw food or the green leafy starchless vegetables, we're sweeping out the colon like we would sweep a room or sweep off a floor and get the dust and dirt out, and doing it in a way that won't make us feel too bad. We may feel bad because that waste has been in the system for so long. It's got to come out. So we have to tolerate the feeling bad for a little while until we can clean out. And the other way is we can use a laxative. I mentioned the golden seal and echinacea, but there's Cascara sagrada, there's aloe vera, just eating prunes, that helps to clean out the colon. Or like I said, just the green leafy vegetables. And the other thing which brings to mind is combinations of foods. We will have to be very careful about combinations of foods, because remember, animals in the forest only eat one thing at a time. And that's what we're intended. That's the way we're intended to eat. So, for instance, if I ate a salad, and I have done what I mentioned, I have eaten just the green leafy salad by itself, 5 ounces. And okay, I'm still getting to that on a daily basis. So when I eat a salad, I might put, no more than 5 other things. For instance, avocado might go in there. Some people like radishes, broccoli. Some put tomato in there, which, we could call it a fruit, depends on how we're evaluating it. But I think you get the point that, it's a raw vegetable thing that can be called a fast for a day or 3 or 5, whatever you decide. And then getting back to the nourishing, more nourishing kinds of food, like the fruits, if that'll work for you, or when that'll work for you. When the colon is clean, the system's more clean, then that opens up the way for more fruits. Does that answer your question at all?
You're on mute.
Yeah, yes, it does. I was trying to shake my head as I was searching for my mute button. Yes, it does. Yeah. Thank you.
Good, Vanessa. Good to see you, Vanessa.
Good to see you too.
Okay, Don, we have a question. The question Brother Eno was asking is, he says, have you looked into the food structures for other regions of the world? Your presentation seems to be skewed mostly to Western food.
Well, here's the thing. Food, in terms of, like I said, for all of humanity, fruits, human beings are fruitarians. So in a particular region in the world, that individual can make the choice of what fruits they want to eat. I know some people were telling me about moringa. And I've only tried moringa once or twice. So the fruits that I'm mentioning, I'm not exactly saying those fruits that are just in the Western world. But what I am saying is any fruit that is grown organically, that's the fruit to consider to eat for that individual, that human being, no matter where they are on the planet. Because now you bring up a question or something that someone else said to me about people that might live in Alaska, and they may not be able to get to, growing their food. I would have to live in Alaska to really answer that kind of question. But since I brought it up, what people in Alaska can get to green leafy starchless foods, and they can get to fruits as well. They're not all living in a igloo where they don't get to the store. So the idea is for us as human beings to get to the place where we're eating, and this is the category, no matter where you are on the planet, fruit, green leafy starchless vegetables, and sometimes nuts. And that's it. That is the mucusless diet healing system that Arnold Ehret talks about. I talk about living food. He does too, but he has another category. The other kinds of foods are mucus lean. And what I mean by that is, if I eat brown rice and beans, earlier I mentioned about wheat meat. Well, my body gives me the same reaction by eating those beans and rice that it does with the wheat meat. So after I eat that, I have to take a golden seal and echinacea, maybe a few drops. I like the tincture best, because extracts are more powerful, and then roots, and then herbs. But the mucus-lean diet is a transition. It's bringing us into the mucus-less diet, where the food is alkaline. It's not acidic. It's not causing disease. But the mucus-lean diet, again, brown rice, and incidentally, if you're going to have rice, soak it overnight. Soak it overnight, and then you can prepare it, boiling and so forth, till it's tender and all of that. But remember, study, investigate, test, and experiment. So I hope I've answered the brother's question. It is fruit that's living and grown organically, no matter where it is consumed on the planet.
If you can, he's nodding his head, so I think his question may have been answered. So, Don, I had a few questions that I had highlighted from your book, but interestingly enough, you answered them. But there was a point in here you made had to do with women, and you said something to the effect that women could end the cycle of menstruation, and you associated that with right on the heel of that. You said something about the cleansing process. So, if you want to just elaborate on that, I'm curious about that.
Yes, my beloved friend and mentor, Professor Arnold Ehret, mentions that in his book, that he worked with thousands of people and did research and so forth. And incidentally, Arnold Ehret was a person who had a kidney disease, and he went to all kinds of physicians and so forth. And make a long story short on that, he brought himself back to health in this way. So what we're talking about when we say the menstruation cycle is eliminated, why? Because once the blood is clean, then there's no waste to eliminate.
Interesting.
Now, this is so difficult for people to believe. What we actually need is somebody, a woman, to have experienced it, to report to us that truth. The closest we can get to it today, unless there's somebody on the call, the closest we can get to it today is the documentation from Professor Arnold Ehret that says he has experienced it with those people that he worked with. So it is very possible. As a matter of fact, what he has the chapter is coupled along with the Immaculate Conception. It can happen. In other words, he's talking about the fact that amoebas reproduce themselves. One-celled animals reproduce themselves. Isn't that an example that if that animal can reproduce itself, why does it seem impossible that a human being can't do that? I'll give you an example. In 2013, it was reported, I think it was an NBC report, where a shark had given birth without copulation. Well, of course, we'd have to investigate that more than me just mentioning it. But I'm saying that with the creation, with the attunement, with the all of creation, anything is possible, or all things are possible. So, to respond to what you're saying about the end of menstrual cycles or the end of menstruation, it's because the blood is so clean, there's no waste in there to have to eliminate.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's the pertinent point that you just made is cleaning, having clean blood, eliminating waste. So we're talking about a condition where over a period of time, there is little to no waste in the body. And that's an ideal goal to strive for. In your book, I think it's in chapter 3, you call it Paradise in Earth, then Paradise on Earth. And that's when you said sickness is unnecessary. And that's a strong statement to make, particularly in a climate these days where I'm sure everybody on the call has either personally succumbed to the sickness of this current wave, as it's been called, a pandemic, COVID-19, or have lost the loved ones to that situation, or to other illnesses or other diseases. So I don't know if you want to speak on that whole thing about sickness being unnecessary in light of what I think everybody on the call have dealt with recently, and I know you yourself told me you have, I think you said you lost friends. So I'll let you pick up, and I'm hitting straight to the point on this because it's the thing right now that is at the top of everyone's mind as it relates not just to their health, but to their very to their very survival on this planet. You know, us down here in Texas, we had a situation a week or so ago that challenged our survival. It was a polar stream that came through, I suspect, or that's what's reported. And so it took us to places that we had never gone before. And this thing that's been reported as this global pandemic appears to be taking people to places where they never gone before. So I just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, Henry, you bring up so many good points. I hope I can address each one. But of course, when we're talking about this current situation, I mentioned earlier, this law of love is the connection to the eternal. And I mentioned that those who have made the transition, we will see them again. And as from a human standpoint, it brings sadness and it hurts to lose a loved one. So I want to offer my condolences to those who have lost a loved one. And the loss of anyone diminishes us. And when a person makes this transition, they're being initiated, if you will, into the realm of higher consciousness. And for that, we should be very joyful. Hopefully our sadness turns to reverence. Our reverence turns to joy because we remember the joy. And we take our love and share that love that we can no longer share physically with that loved one and share it with others. Now, that being said, we talked about the 5 senses earlier. And let's take the nose. The reason why this COVID so-called virus has been so powerful is because when the virus latches on to the mucus in the nose has been telling the human being that there's an abundance of accumulated waste in the system. But because we haven't learned, or we haven't been able to regenerate the education that we have had, and the prevaricating spirits block that understanding, or the destructive spirits block that understanding, then we don't know that when the nose is clean from mucus, which is the indication that the system is clean, the blood is clean, then there's nothing for the virus or the bacteria to latch onto. That is Mother Nature's vaccine. That is the true vaccine. But we as human beings, we might consider we are so addicted overall to the wrong way of consuming that we believe is the right way. The addiction has caused the mucus and the poisons to accumulate to the point where the virus can cause illness and death. So now we have this challenge. Do we believe this kind of talk? Do we investigate it to see if it's true? Well, I'm sitting here, I'm saying to you that 40 years ago, when my stepfather was dying in 2 weeks as a 14-year-old child, I watched this happen, and the Spirit said to me, now you must study how to make sure this can never happen to you or any other human being. I'm giving you now the direction to do it for yourself. And then once you accomplish it, take it to everyone else and share that. Because if you have a light, don't put it under a bushel. Share your light with the world. Because no one was meant to suffer. Yes, this so-called body, this envelope, if you will, is going to break down. But we've heard of people who just walk away. And don't we know when it's time to go to sleep? And then something happens and we wake up. Doesn't it appear that the sun is down one place? Let's say in Philadelphia, the sun is up and it's down in Japan. Does that mean that there's no sun? Or does that mean there's no sun in certain places at certain times? So all I'm saying is that this coronavirus, while real to some of us, to those of us who had prepared, maybe even unknowingly, but prepared for disease prevention, is for those of us that have done that, it's another day. It's nothing happening. And not only that, it is prevention from disease where you cannot give another person the disease and you can't get to the disease. So like I said, this is Mother Nature's, by making a transition from non-living to living foods, is Mother Nature's way of giving you a vaccine. If they had done this when smallpox was happening, actually, if they had done it before that, there would never be any smallpox. But because people have allowed the viruses and the bacteria to create the disease within themselves, it appears that we can take something outside of ourselves and create a solution. But the reality is, it reminds me of, we talked before what Martin Luther King said, I just want to do God's will. That's what is inside of every human being. Human beings may block that out and, whatever causes it. And what Malcolm X said, you've been tricked. You've been bamboozled. You've been lied to. The thing is, we do it to ourselves. And when we find this truth and turn it around, they won't be able to grow food like GMOs. They won't be able to sell you products where the wheat has been changed to, it's not wheat anymore. It's said to be wheat, but it's not, you know?
So I have a quick question for you. I don't think nobody on this call would challenge you, but others are going to watch this video, and I could hear the thoughts in Sam's mind to say, yeah, I wonder if he would go out without a mask on into a group or somewhere unprotected and not have any fear of catching this virus if he's so bad.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you put it that way, because here's the thing. I'm doing this as a humble servant. I'm not a bad man. I'm not, that's, gratifying. We can have fun with that. But here's the thing. I'm just a servant. I'm here to help people. And will I walk into a room with people who all have COVID-19? Yes, I don't have a problem with that, because you see, my mentality is such that within me says, I have given you protection. You don't have a thing to worry about. You must continue to follow the rules. And as long as you follow the rules, then you will be given protection. So I'm not approaching this from an arrogant way, I'm tougher than anybody, I'm better. No, because I'm just an ordinary guy, it's just, but with that kind of protection, it eliminates the fear. And it allows you to say, I have courage to be an example of what can happen for everyone. Because we're all linked together. Each one of us is just a cell in the blood of humanity. And what we're all trying to do is come together as one. It's going to happen. It's like I mentioned earlier, from 2004 to now, over 3,000%, there's been a greater percentage of people interested in this kind of conversation. So the consciousness of humanity is evolving, and it's like a spiral. People know in their hearts this is the truth. Some people just, want to continue just to ignore it. And I understand that, because when you've been addicted from generation to generation, this kind of talk is like, man, please, they don't want to hear that. But it's not them. It's the destructive spirit that has latched onto their psyche, to their mind, and they don't know it. So they think they're making the decisions, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to certainly continue to be in dialogue with you. I'm going to be reading more pages of your book, because every time I pick it up, I find those one sentence, two sentences, because I can tell you, Don, I was raised here in Texas, and we pride ourselves being the best barbecuing state in the country and probably the world. And so, having to go from this being in my backyard grilling, that, whether it's, I gotten away from the red meat some time ago, but, I still enjoy, oh my God, a Greenberg turkey on Thanksgiving. But after meeting you and having these conversations, I must admit, I've been kind of changing my diet kind of, and like you said, I think in my hearts of hearts, I think my soul knew this, but having to talk to this guy named Don on the phone every couple of weeks or so and thinking, okay, what would Don think about this? I knew that, and I think you talk about it in your book. As a matter of fact, you said there are two forces. And you said in chapter 4, you said, listen to your body. You said the poisons leaving the systems causes this feeling. You said one force is life in abundance, and the other force, and you just frankly said, its aim is to kill you. One force's aim is to give you life in abundance, and the other force, and you talk about forces, and that's sometimes a challenge for people to, reconcile relative to physical matter. But you're talking about two forces, one whose aim is to give you life in abundance and one whose aim is to kill you. You just outright said kill you. Do you want to speak to that? There's a force that's, yeah. So, and I'm going to say this, by the way, in as much as I'm asking you that question, the other day, as I refined my way of consuming nutrients to nourish my body, because I'm looking at it a different way now as I train myself to get away from these habitual ways that I have been trained here in Texas in this incarnation. And I like the way you put it when you said Hamilton Sr., as he was dying of colon cancer, you were given that edict to say, here, you are the observer of this. Now go ye forth and learn how to not allow this to happen, not just to yourself, but that voice that was speaking to you apparently knew you incarnated as a 14-year-old kid to have the discipline to do it. Now talk to others about how you do it. But so I'm gonna wrap up by saying I've had to tell myself, okay, Henry, what are your options? I know you get up, because even just in the last 2 weeks alone, I've gone to this, it's talked about as the ketogenic diet. So basically it's just lowering the carbs. So I've lowered the carbs significantly and shed about 9 pounds now, but that's not the point. The point is to get my body back in balance so that the chemical makeup of my body doesn't destroy my body, because that's what was beginning to happen, is there was an imbalance that was beginning to destroy my body, the chemical. So I told myself, and you talk about these forces, here's your choices, Henry. You could live and be healthy and be vibrant, or you could keep doing what you're doing, and those spirits, forces, elements you're putting into your body, they're going to kill you. So which one do you want? Now, I don't know if that's extreme, but that's the reasoning that came to me over the last 2 weeks. And that has helped me to discipline myself willfully to rethink what I put in my mouth. And how I move my body around and take care of it. So I know I said a lot, but, you were very pointed when you said one force's aim is to give you life in abundance and one force aim is to kill you. That's pretty, how should I put it? That's pretty poignant and direct. So I'll let you comment.
Okay, yes. Because remember, we talked about the law of love surrounding everything. And that is the law of vibrations. So the human being is not aware that destruction leads a person to destruction. But when the human being is aware, can recognize, realize, and manifest the power of creation, then they see in their mind and in their heart that destruction wants to be led to harmony. And that's when they make the change and do the things that are right eating the right foods in the right way. So that longevity has its place, but it's living without suffering. And it's willingness to slowly make that transition from non-living to living foods. And it's living carbohydrates. It's living sugars. It's everything living as opposed to non-living. So when you mention abundance in life, that's the fruits, the organic fruits, the green leafy starchless vegetables, and the nuts. When we talk about what will kill us, if we eat something dead, we become something dead.
Or processed, I guess. Is that dead?
Yes, that's actually, yes, it's denatured. For instance, refined sugar as opposed to organic sugar. Okay. And all we have to really think about is ask ourselves, did Mother Nature make it? That's organic. So we really are at a place where if we as people start to institute organic and sustainable farming, because you talked about, and also institute disease prevention education. Okay. You mentioned about being in Texas and having fun with the grill. I'm all for fun, but we want to consider that when we're grilling, if we're using charcoal, I know some are just using other forms, but remember, that's changing the composition for Mother Nature. Mother Nature cooked the food with the sun. Mm-hmm. And that's sufficient. But now here's the other thing. I understand business and how the manufacturers of cattle and chickens and hogs and so forth, I understand that's an industry. But I think those who are profiting from that industry right now might consider how to also make a transition from, instead of growing so many, and in my case, I would say any, but growing the cattle, and let's look into how much grass is eaten and so forth, but growing the cattle, instead of growing the cattle on that farm or on that land, why don't we plant more orchards and grow more trees and more bushes, berries, melons, living food? It can be as profitable because people are going to be changing. That's why I was making the point. If we stop buying those things, the producers will start producing what the people want.
Yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the people have to want it. And when we are talking about the living food, let's not forget that if we're going to get to that place of having clean blood, we can do it just with the clean food, but we want to consider cleaning out the colon. That may mean studying how to do that with water. Water is the great purifier. We can take a glass of water and just drink a little of it. That's a degree of purification. But if we learn how to clean out the colon with water, and what I'm saying is enema, just to be straightforward. If we learn how to do that, it's going to just help us along the way. Doesn't mean we have to. If we don't do it, it just takes a little longer. But it is something to highly consider, because once it is done and done correctly. Because again, you got to study these things. It's important for the human being to study, investigate, test, and experiment, and meditate and visualize the end result so that when it's all said and done, everyone is happy.
All right, Don. So on that note, I'm getting a message from a little birdie here that says others may have questions and comments. And I noticed that 2 individuals had unmuted themselves. So since we're an hour and a half in, I'm going to allow some other questions. And I want to say to everybody, if you have to leave, you can leave. Don and I have a tendency, we could talk all day, but we're gonna try to bring this to Ken's another one that will talk with me all day. I have to out him.
It's the Leo thing, right?
It's that Leo thing.
It's a Leo thing. Hi, Don. It's very nice to see you again. So I'm gonna ask for a little forgiveness as a precursor to this question. I have some conditioning built into me from my former career to be a little protective of organizations I'm associated with. And so since this is going to be published on our YouTube channel and available for others to see, I just want to be very clear that neither you nor the IFGT are in any way advocating that it would be a good idea to just run out now into the general population without taking the suggested precautions against COVID. That's not what I heard, but I just want to make sure that doesn't get misconstrued. And it leads to a broader point, because throughout these 2 conversations now, I've found just this incredible kind of mental volleyball going on, where there's my ego mind telling me all these things and raising all these skeptical questions. And then the higher consciousness kicks in and knows the truth to what I'm hearing. It's really kind of fascinating to observe. So along those lines, I think what we're talking about with regard to your own personal perspectives on your own personal risk or lack thereof in terms of becoming infected with the coronavirus is that you have developed something in you that might be called the immune system that could tolerate that. And if people are wondering, that doesn't have to mean that you've done something supernatural, because look at the broad spectrum of human reactions to exposure to this. There are, probably the vast majority of people that do get exposed have no symptoms. And that's part of what, we've been warned about and making it so dangerous. And I think there's probably still more that isn't known about exactly how this is acting in human bodies, but there are people that do get obviously very sick, either for extended periods of time or die. But I think more often than not, those people tend to have other health challenges, be it just age or obesity or hypertension or whatever it is. And so I'm just kind of on the protective organizational front. I just want to make sure that anybody that might be hearing this now or in the future doesn't get any wrong idea that you were saying it's okay, we don't have to worry about it, we have the power within all of us to avoid getting sick. I don't think we're advocating that whatsoever, but I do think it's also highly likely that after living such a healthy life and doing the years and years of research and the considered study and experimentation you've done to formulate what you ingest and how you live, that it's quite likely that you have a strong enough immune system and constitution that you may very well retain your health and not become sick when you're exposed to things that could kill other people. So that's my shot at trying to get in the ring with Henry and and not be brief, as we've talked about before. So.
Well, thank you, Ken. Here's the thing, and you did a great job on that, by the way. And it's sort of a disclaimer. I mean, here's the thing. We want to be in support of each other, and we care about each other. And each individual is confronted with how they're going to deal with this corona virus situation. I will say that disease is one thing that it's not being taught that way. So we don't really have that perspective of seeing disease as being one thing. But when we do start to see it that way as one thing, which is constipation. We talked earlier how if we look at the viscera, the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, when there's so much accumulated waste there, then it's called whatever it's called. We might call diabetes when that mucus and pus and congestion, that constipation is in the pancreas. So the point is that the coronavirus is occurring because in the nose, the virus latches on to the waste. And that is what's not being taught, so that it's understandable why people have this fear. But when it starts to generate in terms of more teaching about how to eliminate waste, then we can start to get a better accepting understanding of how no one has to ever get sick from it. So, yes, from a political standpoint, to say the things that you have put on the table, it's appreciated, and everyone is in a position to make their decision. As I said before, we're all one person. We're all breathing the same air. But depending on our individual condition, in other words, how much mucus and poisons are in that individual system will determine whether the virus actually happens or, moves forward to make the person sick. You mentioned about people not being aware of it. If that person, whoever, has accumulated waste, and we're all on the verge of sickness, the question is to what degree? So we have to think about how to diminish those things that cause the disease. How can we dominate those things rather than those things dominating us? When that happens and we change the cause of disease, we change the effect of the cause, then we can eliminate it and we can have no fear about it. So until people get to that place, we will continue to have the fear. And that's why we're sitting here today talking about it like this. And that's why I hear you say, there are things about, it's attraction and it's cohesion. It is really how the Spirit is working. Hopefully, all of us are having that same feeling, because what we're doing is we're relating to that law of love within ourselves. And the more we meditate on it, the more we concentrate, contemplate, meditate, and pray on what is the Spirit directing me to do? What am I here for? What is the purpose of my life? I'll just relate this. And again, like I've said earlier, this is not about Don Ringgold. I am not here to say what I think is right. What I am here to do is to report what higher consciousness has directed me to report. And that is, no one has to suffer from any disease. Never had to. But things caused us to have to, and we latched onto it. Now we're in a position where even Jupiter and Saturn, after over 800 years, is indicating that now is the time to make those kind of adjustments that we haven't made over those 3,000 years. So we're in a position to look at this disease conventionally or organically. That's the position we're in.
Yeah, I'm hearing. I'm running into a theme in my own evolution and unfolding around just continually learning how to become more discerning on a whole number of fronts. I don't know if you've used that particular term, but that's really what you've kind of been referring to in a lot of different parts of what you've shared. And I think the other thing that makes this such a challenging area, like a lot of things, frankly, and a lot of things in spirituality and consciousness, but it's because there are so many things that we do get put in front of us, information we come to, and along the lines of eating and health and nutrition, that are not they're not really in our best interests. And some of those are some of the kind of business practices that you referred to before, but some of them are even more convoluted with, people making wild claims about certain things that are, it's basically the old, snake oil sales or used car sales or whatever you want to say. And so, that's another huge challenge. And so to help all of us discern what's genuine and what can we trust. And, unfortunately for a lot of things like supplements, if you look at a little bit of the fine print, every supplement manufacturer has to print that these have not been evaluated by the US FDA. And, there's no strong government sanctioned empirical evidence behind them. And so I think that when you talk about your SITE acronym, for instance, that's what I kind of think of as it's up to us, unfortunately, to gather the information and then try to make our best judgment. There's in addition to the other mental ping pong I described, there's another part of me that just is kind of startled and frustrated, yet I recognize it's pretty naive, that this isn't just common knowledge that we don't have to have these discussions. I mean, it seems we've been on the planet long enough. It should seem obvious how we're supposed to feed ourselves for optimal health. It's kind of amazing that this is even something that could be such a open field that is a mystery to so many of us. Kind of sad in a way.
Yes, you bring up some very good points of view, because when we look at the situation of the allopathic perspective, the naturopathic perspective, chiropractic, and we look at the situation where, I may need to get an x-ray, or I may need to get a colonostomy, or anyway, my point is this. Mother Nature has given us the magic mirror, but we haven't allowed ourselves to use it. In other words, the tongue can tell us what's going on within our body. Our eyes can tell us what's going on. Like I said, the nose could tell us, but do we listen? That's the whole thing. And if we're being taught not to use those things and to depend on things and people outside of ourselves, it's not like other people can't help us. But if they're not doing it or haven't done it, then how can they help us? So in other words, what I'm saying is we can go to, like you said, people have this snake oil thing and all of that. But when it comes down to it, the question is, how is the human being going to experience clean blood. Because if we're told, well, take this, take that, are we going to ask ourselves, oh, is this going to create clean blood? And if it's not going to create clean blood, it's not the thing to do. And it's the same thing for dental work. Did Mother Nature put a cap on our teeth? And so forth. So we're confronted with a whole transformation, if you will. And the other part is, for those of us who are beyond 40, we're in a position to help our children to regenerate what has been lost. We may not do it as totally as Mother Nature intended, but we can at least plant the seed. And if we plant the seed in fertile soil, and every human being is fertile soil, then we've done something very meaningful that hasn't happened in the past. So we can determine for ourselves, is it snake oil or is it the truth? And so, again, Ken, you bring up some very good points. And I think that each one of us has to look into how everything helps. We cannot shake things up in our system by putting more poisons in. Once we start to make the transition, we want to eliminate putting the poisons in. Because what happens is, once we start to clean out, if we go back to doing the old things, that stops the healing process. And what we're talking about here is diet through healing. And that is so, Henry mentioned about the keto. I heard that word, keto. We've been confronted in such a way that we are ignoring the one thing of getting back to what is going to cause clean blood. When we use that as a foundation, then all the other things become nullified. And it brings us into one thing. What do we consume that's going to create clean blood? Everybody can tell us something different. But if we do that one thing, then we're going to raise ourselves to another degree of being.
All right. So as we prepare to, thank you, Don, as we prepare to close here, I know there's an individual on this call who's an author himself and who's never without words to say. So I'm going to give him I see he's unmuted his mic. So I'm going to allow Seth to contribute, and then I'm going to make some closing statements about the Institute for Global Transformation. So Seth, I notice you've unmuted your mic. If you have a question or comment to Don, please share.
Thanks, Henry. I do. Don, thank you for everything. This has been great. I too belong to the verbose club here, so I'm sorry about that. I went to the Amazing Grass website, and they have a ton of products. So the one that you are referring to, I am thinking is the green superfood, and there's 3 flavors. And is there one that you recommend that is best?
Berry.
Okay. Thanks for that. The second thing is that it seems that with this diet, that it is alkaline based. Okay. So that, and that produces a healing effect within the body. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay. So the question I have is, and I have a really sensitive system, and pretty good kinesthetic awareness. Okay. Fruits and nuts do not have a good reaction with me. Most foods don't, by the way. Okay. I think maybe Henry's ribs would probably work real fine, but the thing is that maybe in this detox process, then you can reintroduce them to your system. But for somebody like me that has I mean, a super sensitive system. If I went just on vegetables and they feel fine, okay, I mean, there's no problem with them, and I mean, if you have that awareness, there's that which feels good, and then there's that which is bad but might taste good. You know what I mean? Vegetables are good. Fruits do not work with me that well. Nuts don't either. I want to start this process, and I'm going to pick up your book. But where do you go then? Because just one more addendum to this. It seems like you talked about organic, and because protein, like organic chicken or whatever, okay, is at least not acidic for the most part, okay, and if mixed with like salads or vegetables, it's not too bad. Can you go there, or where do you get your protein? And the fats that you like, we haven't really talked about those. Natural oils, maybe like olive oil or something like that.
Yeah, we actually, when I mentioned avocado, that's a form of alkaline fat, or a organic fat. And but let's address what you're talking about in terms of your particular system not being able to get good reaction from eating fruits. Well, that's what I was talking about initially, where a person whose body doesn't accept that kind of food, then we have to listen to the body and address what it needs during a transition. So green leafy starchless vegetables, as you mentioned, they kind of work for you, or you mentioned vegetables work for you. And remember that steamed vegetables bring out the sugar, or steaming vegetables brings out the sugar. For instance, if you were able to, if you like cabbage, let's say you like cabbage, but if you don't, there's other greens that you could consider. But some people like steamed cabbage, kale, an onion in there, and a baked potato. And that's dinner. It could be breakfast as well, just like I talked about the fruit earlier. For certain people, it could be breakfast and dinner. But what I'm getting at is that once you study how to listen to the God of your heart, and how to make the transition in a way that's going to be comfortable for you, then you can get through the problem of your body not accepting fruits and nuts. Eventually, the body will accept it, but it's got to be done very strategically. And that's why it's so important to take your time and listen to your body. It will tell you, your body will tell you when you're ready to eat the fruits and the nuts. So I'd say continue with the green leafy vegetables and vegetables that agree with you. And the animal product, you're reminding me of when I started out, because I took 5 years of not eating animal product. And then I went back to it for 5 years. And then I mentioned how I used the echinacea and golden seal. You may not be able to use that. Maybe elderberry will work for you instead. But that's the value of studying how to make these things palatable and joyful, because the whole idea is to make this transition with joy, the law of love.
Thank you. One follow-up. When you're taking the superfood, the best time to take that, and how much and when and all that? I mean,
good question. My experience is, number one, always, I find it best, I start the day that way. So when I'm drinking my water in the morning, and actually this morning, what I did was I had some freshly squeezed orange juice, about 8 ounces or less. And I put the green superfood, the berry formula. And I use the berry formula because it's more palatable.
Oh, okay.
So I took that in the orange juice. And that's how I started the day. And I had some other things as well. But again, it depends on the individual system. But there have been days when, especially if I'm playing tennis, I might take another of that same amount before dinner or just during the day. So again, what I'm doing is listening to my body. But generally speaking, I usually just take it in the morning, that amount that it recommends of the amazing grass green superfood.
Great. Just one more. I'm sorry, they're just coming to the surface. This will be the last.
As you want. Go ahead. But I know I may be the time factor, but go ahead.
Your opinion of stevia.
So you're asking good questions. My opinion of stevia, I do not recommend it. I probably take it more than I would like to because it's in certain products that I'm experimenting with. Yeah, but the natural food the sugar that we need is in the food, and stevia is the food, so that's okay. But notice, is stevia in fruit?
No,
not usually that I know of. So it's in products, but remember now that's man's input. And when man has this input, like for instance, even with this amazing grass green superfood, Mother Nature didn't put it in that powder form like that. But we are finding that the results are not so bad. The results are pretty good. So that's where I'm at with stevia. I'm not against it.
But not the healthiest thing to put in your body.
I'm not going to recommend it.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I took up so much time.
No, don't be sorry. Please be happy. I appreciate it. I think it's great.
Thank you again.
All right. Well, I think everybody's got a chance to participate. So I'm bringing up the logo because I'm going to begin to close out. So the Institute for Global, Don, I want to say thank you, first of all, for coming on. And before I bring up the logo, I'm going to say thank you for coming on and gracing us with your years of research, your years of investigation and sharing that with us. So trying to get this, the video for recording and all. So again, a thought came to me as you were talking, and what I'm going to do is, even as I'm talking, forgive me, because I'm working the controls for effects here. You know how it is. You've been in broadcasting. So you may have noticed I just muted your screen because it's causing an effect here that I'm trying to manage. But anyway, this conversation is so necessary that it occurred to me, we could go on for the next 2 or 3 hours, but I know everybody has a life and other things to do. So, Don, what I'm going to do is the Institute for Global Transformation has other programs. One of them happens to be the Spiritual Happy Hour, which I host every Thursday night. So I'm going to invite you to one of those calls. It may not be the next one, but I'm going to invite you to one of those calls because typically I've been the one setting the topic, and we just go from there. Occasionally others have, but I always invite others who have ideas to host for the night. So I'm going to reach out to you and invite you to join us on the Spiritual Happy Hour one night. And we're going to have this conversation. I'm going to say all over again, because every time I've spoken with you, the theme is you're always very consistent and, with the theme and very on top, not just on topic, but let me just say very consistent. The clean blood, the basically colon, you're cleansing your body, getting rid of waste. And so I want to have this conversation again with other individuals. So that's my invitation to you, and I'll reach out to you and do that. Now I'm gonna close out, and before I close out, I'm gonna bring up our logo, and I'm gonna talk to those that will be listening about who we are here at the Institute for Global Transformation, and then I'll come off that, let you have your last closing words, and let everyone say farewell. So here we go. The Institute for Global Transformation is not your ordinary organization. It is typical to always take something new, different, and income and try to fit it into standard old forms and thought patterns. But this doesn't always work. We need to build new forms, and the Global Institute for Global Transformation is a new type of organization that is engaged in building new forms for how together we can create a better world for everyone. Our vision is a world working together to utilize the power, love, and wisdom of higher consciousness to benefit humanity and the planet. Our mission is to support transformations in consciousness and in the way humanity interacts with one another so as to bring about a positive change in the world individually and collectively. And so, Don, that's what you have done today. You have helped us once again to work together, to employ the power of love, wisdom, to raise ourselves to another slightly, as you said, on the spire, higher degree of consciousness. And that's what we'll continue to do. We'll continue to ask our questions. We'll continue to challenge our egoic mind, our objective mind, and we'll continue to let each one share what their own studies and investigations have come up, have yielded them, and then to report back to us in the form of testimonies and sharing what that's worked. So on that note, Don, I'm going to get the book, Don Ringgold's Health, Wealth, the Genesis Project. And it's not just a book to just, gloss through and read and say, okay, I've read the book already, because I'm on my fourth reading now, if not fifth. But I don't read it anymore. I refer back to it when I'm having questions, and typically I can get done. But when I can't get done, or when I don't want to bother them, I just get the book. And there's a lot of references in the back, and I'll let Don have closing words on that. Go ahead, Don.
Yes. Firstly, again, your organization is to be commended for your leadership. So I thank you so much for allowing me to be of service, to have the opportunity to be of service. And if there's anything we remember about today, let's remember the law of love. Because some people interpret being loving as weakness. But when we become strong and powerful, we become godlike. We become loving. And we get so much more done than we've ever been able to get done before. So loving one another, I think the foundation of that is that formula. Remember this formula. V equals P minus O. Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System book is in the back of Don Ringgold's Health, Wealth, and other books. That's so important. And those books are for you because they will be references. So I'm going to just end with this from Pythagoras. As long as men continue to destroy ruthlessly the living beings from the lower kingdoms, they will know neither health nor peace. As long as they massacre animals, they will each other.
Wow.
In effect, whoever sows murder and suffering cannot reap joy and love. So may the glory of the cosmic abide with you, and may peace profound be yours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Don. Thank you to everyone who attended today. We will be putting this up on YouTube, and it actually becomes part of our membership program going forward. I may discuss with the board an opportunity to have one viewing as a sort of a trial basis, but we will, talks going forward, we become part of our pay-in program, which we call the Transformers membership. And it's a simple, I call it $5 a month program, because, you know, it's easy to reconcile $5 a month. And we also offer discounts to students. That $5 a month, you could either do that or you can pay $50 a year. Students, and I think we call them seniors. I think there's $40 a month, households $40 a month. Maybe I think there's one for $35. You can go on the website and check it out. But going forward, as we bring our new website up, this will be part of our paid membership program. And so thank you again for being a part of this, to allow us to carry out our mission as the Institute for Global Transformation, and to inform those in the world of ideas such as Don Ringgold's and that which he spent 40 plus years of his life studying, investigating, testing, and reporting back to us on. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. I'm going to end the call, or actually I'll keep it open because I have a couple of words we'll edit out. But if you're on a schedule, you can, we'll call this the end of the program. Thank you all for attending today. Have a great evening.